This episode of Wheat Pete's Word is brought to you by Syngenta. Harvest season is here, and your friends at Syngenta want to extend a heartfelt wish for a safe and productive harvest season. Take extra care on the public roadways. Your safety matters as much as your yield. Your family is counting on your safe return home each night.
Good day, and welcome to Wheat Pete's Word here on Real Agriculture for Wednesday, October the 22nd. On this episode of The Word, the rain has returned right at harvest. Soybean planting date, some really cool observations and notes there. Fall phosphorus, we need to talk about that. Phantom yield loss, and if I get to it, fertilizer actually increases soil organic carbon. A new study. If I don't get to that this week, we will talk about it at some point in the future. Let's go! Dang, summer, our extended summer has ended. Oh gosh, it was so nice to have those 25-degree days and warm nights, no furnaces turned on, the odd person still using air conditioning, if you can imagine, into late October here in Ontario. Meanwhile, now it has cooled off. So Dean sending me a nice picture. He planted some winter wheat on October the 9th. It emerged on October the 20th. So that's 11 days. In September, it was taking 5 or 6 days. If you were planting wheat today on October 22nd with these current temperatures, it would take at least 2 weeks to emerge. So, yeah, we knew fall was coming. It is here. And with the return of fall comes the rain. And so we needed the rain. I mean, gosh, Brad saying finally the wheat that he planted in late September sitting in dry soil has moisture so that it can start to grow. It hasn't emerged yet. It's just now. And that wheat will take an extended period of time. Even though it was planted in late September, it's not going to emerge until probably pretty close to the very end of October. That's a full month from that standpoint. It will be fine. But wow, what a difference from that perspective. Of course, the rain has returned right as we get in full swing into corn harvest. And so certainly some producers, Brett in particular, sending me a text just saying, oh man, like now it's just muddy and mucky and we're going to make a mess on the roads. And it just, yeah, that's welcome to Ontario. We knew it was going to start to rain at some point. The soils are dry. We're not going to get into real compaction issues, or we shouldn't at least get into deep compaction issues for an amount of time, but it is going to make harvest just that little bit much trickier. The other thing I do want to mention just before I leave that whole thought process is winter canola. Oh my gosh. So Brad's wheat, and by the way, Mark Davis being very surprised. Mark broadcasts wheat into standing soybeans. He's in central Ontario, extremely dry. He has soybeans that are yielding in the poor spots less, like single digits. And he broadcasts soys, and as I've talked about, normally we want some of those leaves to cover that. Mark saying that, gosh, wheat is just an amazing beast because even where we got almost no rainfall and no soybean leaves to cover those wheat seeds up, the stand is much better than we anticipated, and the wheat that we drilled, it's sitting in dry soil as well, waiting for this moisture that we just got. So from that perspective, wheat is an amazing beast. Canola, on the other hand, will sit in dry soil, but for the canola, and I was driving north of London, scouting some canola, there are canola fields where a third of the field did not emerge, just did not get into moisture, didn't have enough moisture, can't plant canola deep to get to moisture. That canola emerges on October 31st. Oh, I'm very concerned that canola is not going to make it. Meanwhile, Frederick from Denmark sending me some pictures of some winter canola that they have there. Of course, they're much more experienced with canola than we are, but wow, that canola just very, very impressive, and with much lower seeding rates than what we use here in Canada, or at least in Ontario. So we will have to chat more about that in the future. All right, I want to move on and just say Adam, thank you so much. Adam sending me a picture of him sitting there holding his newborn daughter, listening to Wheat Pete's word. And by the way, that was last Saturday, I think, or perhaps Wednesday night, I forget exactly, but it was last week's word. And I talked about when to terminate the cover crop, and that just happened to be Adam's question. So we answered his question, and just so nice to see that picture. So thanks. Those types of things, man, Pete loves them, so keep sending them. Perry sending me a picture on Saturday of out planting more winter wheat. And he said, so Pete, you'll love this. We combined the wheat today, we high-speed disked it, and we're planting it tonight after dark. And I'm going, yeah, that's great, Perry, but wait a minute. Wheat after corn, gosh, no, fusarium. So I really hope that you planted a variety of wheat that is moderately resistant to fusarium. We don't have any that are that are totally resistant, so moderately tolerant. That's about as good as we get. And you're going to have to make sure you spray it for the fusarium fungicide. I know you know that, but yeah, wheat after corn, gosh. And meanwhile, there's all these edible bean acres that growers aren't growing wheat after. And another client said, I only put in 100 acres this year, Pete, because the wheat's only $6. And I'm going, gosh. From a rotation standpoint, it just... the wheat really helps. I think you all know where my head is on that. All right, Elliot from Queensland, Australia. We've been chatting back and forth about a few things, but he sent me a picture from Australia with cracks in the soil between the barley rows. And Elliot, of course, looking at different row widths on barley. We talked about that last week. But the cracks in the clay there, yeah, he could put his hand in right up to his wrist and almost a little deeper. So everywhere we go, when it's dry, we definitely can get cracks in the clay. And we'll talk more about that when we get to the fall phosphorus discussion. Scott reminding me. So Scott listened to one of the Word episodes. Thanks for listening, Scott. And he said, you talked about the dust. So the powdery mildew dust and the canola out west, the alternaria dust coming off the corn crop and the soybean crop here in Ontario. And I thought, wow, my combine cab air filter. Yes, let's clean that out. I pulled it out. Unbelievable, the amount of dust that I didn't know it could hold that much dust. So now I am cleaning my cab air filter every day. I'm spending about 12 hours sitting in the combine, combining corn, and this is back before the rain actually started. And he said, every day I pull it out to clean it. Unbelievable how much dust has gotten in there. And two things have happened. Number one, my combine cab windows are staying cleaner on the inside. And number two, at the end of 12 hours, I feel better. So there's even though we have that filter there, keeping it clean matters. So yeah, I love that story, Scott. And please be safe this harvest, 100%. All right, I want to move on. I want to talk about early planted soybeans. So Todd tweeting out a picture of his plot results. And this is a great reminder to say, where are they? Come on, people, get the plot results coming to Wheat Beat, because that's how we learn. But unbelievable. He planted soybeans at the end of April. He planted the same variety trial. So it was a variety trial. He went back and planted the same thing, I think the middle of May, the 10th, 11th, 14th, somewhere in that general time frame. And this year, planting early cost him 9 bushels per acre on average. So he gave up tremendous soybean yield. And I fired that back to him saying, wow, Todd, sure didn't help this year. And his response was, he's done this for 5 years. This is the first time that the early planting has actually resulted in lower yields. Mostly it gives higher yields. So that's an anomaly. And meanwhile, Precision, so PTI, just tweeted out, or rather emailed out, a link to a study on their planting date on soybeans. And when they plant in late April versus planting in mid-May, over their 3 years of the study, I believe, they gained 12 bushels per acre. Now, that's a different region, right, than Ontario, but planting early often does give some benefits with soybeans, but it's not 100%. And of course, What year does Pete plant his soybeans early? We got our soybeans, my great son Jeremy and I managed to get the soybeans planted on the 29th and 30th of April. And this is the year that we shouldn't have done that. Anyway, it's life. Across the board, though, later planted soybeans this year have done amazingly well. Paul planting soybeans in Bruce County on June 26. Now remember, Bruce County, super short season area. June 26, incredibly late. 54 bushels per acre. You would never have expected that high a yield planted that late. Kennedy with some double crop soybeans planted fairly early for double crops. Wasn't after a wheat crop, but anywhere from 40 to 50 bushels per acre on double crop soybeans. So the late planted soybeans this year really did take advantage of the later rains and missed some of the real high temperature moisture-stressed conditions at early flowering that a bunch of our early planted soybeans got. So yeah, just the year, and on average, which I know you can't go by averages, but on average, early planted soybeans do tend to pay, but they did not pay very well in 2025. All right, I want to move on, and just as I talk about this and double crop soybeans, Brendan sending out a picture of double crop soybeans planted after winter barley near Elmira, or Elmira rather. So Elmira, pretty short season. Double crop soybeans, we're not sure they're going to make it, but really cool because they did 3 different varieties, different maturities. So one was a double 0.9, another one was a 0.7, the other one was a 1.0 relative maturity. Who knows where we'll be at? He doesn't have yield results yet, but really cool to see the differences and the opportunity there. Horst Bonner, the soybean specialist with the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Agribusiness, so MAFA, gosh, I got to get my brain around that, says that for the first time in many years that he has done soybean trials at Elmira, and he planted double crop soybeans there, or at least mimicked double crop soybeans there. He says he has a really short season, and he didn't say if, I assume it's a double zero, a really short season soybean variety that at Elmira he thinks is going to actually mature because it's October the 22nd, and we haven't yet had a killing frost at Elmira. So that extended fall is letting some of those soybeans mature. Meanwhile, he also has early applied sulphur trials at Elmira, and we have discussed this out the yin-yang here on the Word and across Ontario and throughout, I think, the Great Lakes Basin. Sean Castile, great soybean specialist or researcher out of Purdue University, with one site in particular where he sees tremendous response to sulphur on soybeans. Horst saying, wow, I barely believed that. But in our trials at Elmira this year, and we don't have all the data summarized yet, but it definitely looks like there is something to sulphur applied on early planted soybeans, even at Elmira. So that's a shift in the recommendations. By the way, I asked Horst because I think this matters. So I said, Horst, in that situation, did the corn that was planted the year before the soybeans have sulphur applied? And his answer was, I do not think it did, because we've had lots of growers try sulphur on soybeans this year and not get a yield response. And in many cases, that's because we put sulphur on the corn crop the year previous, suggesting that sulphur actually can hang around or cycle through the corn residue, something like that. We're not sure what's going on there, but just a really cool thought process, and we're going to have to continue to look at that and to figure out just when do we do it, when don't we do it, and when does it pay. All right, I want to move on and talk about phosphorus. So Jesse, with a great question, just saying, all right, Pete, I know broadcast phosphorus in the fall, not really the best, but I'm broadcasting some potash. So here's the difference, right? With potash, fall application is actually better than spring application because we get a chance for that potash to move into the soil and become more in the root zone. Potash will move kind of an inch every year, give or take. More in sand for sure, like 6 inches in sand, but on most soils moves an inch. If you spread it on the soil surface in the spring, the crop really has to have surface feeder roots to get any benefit out of the spring potash. But in the fall, we get more benefit. And if we do lose some through runoff, it's not an environmental concern. And I mean, the amount we lose through runoff is always pretty small. So it's kind of that trade-off where, yeah, we might lose a little, 1% maybe, but in this situation, we get better response, so that's okay. Phosphorus is the exact opposite, because a little bit of phosphorus moving into Lake Erie, moving into our watercourses, is 100% a massive environmental concern. So, Jesse wanting to broadcast on some fall phosphorus, and his question was, how much do I risk putting on? Can I leave it on the surface, or do I need to work it into the soil? So here's the catch-22 on that, Jesse. You leave it on the surface, it's all bad. And by the way, Lindsay and I talked about this on Agronomy Monday as well, and so we'll link Agronomy Monday in the post to this particular discussion. But my great friend Adam, who scouts with me and consults with me, listened to Agronomy Monday, and he said, hey, Peter, just wait a minute. Good discussion, but I didn't hear anything about preferential flow. And Adam, you're right, I missed that. And man, when it is this dry, and I talked about Elliott in Australia and the cracks, and we know that all of our clays here in Ontario are cracking clays. And so if you have cracks in the soil, Jesse, and you go out and you broadcast on that phosphorus and it rains, man, the first thing that happens is that the phosphorus granule dissolves and we get preferential flow where the phosphorus goes with the water down the crack, and now we don't know where it ends up, but if it's in the tile, it is 100% bad. So if you have cracks in the soil, broadcasting phosphorus 100% not a good situation. But Jesse, if you broadcast it and then work it in, you break up the preferential flow, so that's good, but now you've exposed that soil to more erosion concerns, and particulate phosphorus and soil erosion is also a big environmental problem. So at the end of the day, the right answer is potash in the fall, phosphorus in the spring, and that way we avoid the environmental concern, and we also get higher use efficiency out of the phosphorus, because in the spring, it doesn't have as much time to get tied up with those soil particles. If you're going to put it on in the fall, we really want to get it into the soil in a band and try to not disturb the residue on top if we can at all. Meanwhile, Anders, on the same kind of note from Idaho, Anders from Idaho saying, Peter, I listened to one of your videos. You talked about the phosphorus uptake line or uptake in wheat is a straight line right through to maturity. Have you done any work on spring applied phosphorus? Because you suggested there might be a yield boost there. And by the way, in Idaho, Anders only puts on 22 pounds of P2O5 on his winter wheat crop, and he has low soil tests. Now, they're a low yield region as well, so don't get too bent about that's not very much phosphorus. Well, yeah, if you have low yields, you don't need as much phosphorus. But Anders, yes, we're just finishing up the third year of a spring application of phosphorus on winter wheat, even on low soil tests, and there just ain't nothing there. I thought there would be, there's not, that's what the data says. And so we come back, there's 3 things that wheat needs in the fall when you plant it. It's called phosphorus, phosphorus, and phosphorus, and that's what you need to do. Okay, just before I get to phantom yield loss, Ken from Chatham sent a question in a couple weeks ago, and Ken, I apologize I didn't answer it back then, but there's nothing we can do. So Ken just says, Peter, my corn leaves are absolutely black with aphids. Are they going to stunt the cobs? What is the impact? Well, Ken, when you sent that to me 2 weeks ago, those aphids don't matter at all. And why are they still there? The same reason why the wheat emerged so quickly and the late planted soybeans are actually making maturity this year. We haven't had a frost. Aphids are very, very sensitive to cold temperatures. We get a frost, you're going to kill them. If they're black, my question would be, how long have they been there to build up to that level? And when you say, are they going to hurt the crop? Well, if they hurt the crop, they hurt it a month ago. They're not hurting it at this point. Like, the damage is 100% done. So the real question becomes, when were they there? At what level were they there? And typically, it takes an awful lot of aphids to give any yield loss to corn because they don't transmit any diseases to speak of into corn. Different than the corn leafhopper. That's totally different. We don't have it in Ontario yet. Hopefully it doesn't come here. It is moving north, so something to keep an eye on. But aphids, no big deal. Last, lots of discussion about phantom yield loss and how, like, I don't know how many producers I've talked to who said, oh, we hand sampled corn. It was 26%. We're going to wait because it coming through the combine, it would be 29%. And I'm just going like, why? Why do you wait? Especially, the ground conditions were so good. And what I want you to do is I want you to back up and go to your local elevator, or I mean, if you're drying it at home, figure it out. But if you look at the difference between the drying cost at 26% moisture, because that's what you're going to wait to, 25 or 26, versus 28 or 29%, it's like, I don't know, 5 to 10 cents a bushel. And you give up the potential of harvesting under beautiful soil conditions. And who knows, now that it's raining, who knows how long it's going to continue to rain and just how challenging harvest can be. Plus, phantom yield loss, which I do not believe in phantom yield loss, because phantom yield loss says it just disappears. It respires away. We know it does not respire away. Do we get less yield as we let the corn stand out in the field? And the answer is yes. And particularly in 2025, this year, we will get less yield because a lot of corn has weak shanks from the drought and cobs will drop on the ground. And the drier the cobs get, when we combine them, we get more cob bounce out of the header. We get more butt shelling. The longer the corn sits out, the more the birds feed on it, the deer feed on it, the turkeys feed on it, like the mice feed on it. And so there is yield loss to corn standing in the field. But when you say phantom, it means that we don't know why, and I just don't buy that term. So are you going to take less yield if you wait for it to dry in the field? The answer is yes. The study, again, Precision put out a nice study that they did, and they would say that you want to get in the field at 26% moisture. They didn't do wetter corn than that, but for the most part, you get more yield at 26%. You pay a little bit more drying, but you get enough more yield that still was the most profitable in most situations. So I do not understand. By the way, Wheat Pete, if he talks the talk, he walks the walk. I am done my corn harvest. I started early. I lucked out. I managed to haul it into a beef feedlot where drying didn't matter, but I still would have done that because those last 2 or 3 points that you wait for it, man, a lot of things can go wrong while you wait for it to dry that little bit. And those points of moisture don't cost that much. All right, I will get off my pedestal because, I feel pretty strongly about that, if you could tell. And with that, that's it. That's all on behalf of the team here at Real Agriculture. This is Wheat Pete with the word for Wednesday, October the 22nd. Keep the plot results, the comments, the hybrid plots, keep the feedback coming, please, 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 because I love it. And I will talk to you again next week. See you then.
Thank you for downloading this episode of Wheat Pete's Word, brought to you by Syngenta. Remember to take those extra moments for safety checks, adequate rest, and staying alert in the field this harvest season. Your team at Syngenta wants you to remember that your most valuable crop is you.